Hello and welcome to another Lamp Bible Study. My name is James, your host and Bible reader for Lamp Bible Study. And I hope you're having a blessed day. Hope everything's going very well for you. If not, welcome to Bible Study every Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm always so excited to join in on another Bible study. So I hope that we continue to seek the wisdom of the Lord together through His holy word. And we are still in First Kings, and today we will pick up on First Kings chapter 6. Today has been, it's been a good day when you don't worry about things and when you give things to God. Things happen the way that they're supposed to happen, and it brings relief too. So it removes any type of stress, any type of feelings, thoughts that shouldn't be there, and it brings relief and it brings peace to us. So let's get started with today's lesson, and that is in 1 Kings chapter 6. Solomon builds the temple. In the 480th year after the Israelites had come out of Egypt, in the 4th year of Solomon's reign over Israel, in the month of Ziv, the 2nd month, he began to build the temple of the Lord. The temple that King Solomon built for the Lord was 60 cubits long, 20 wide, and 30 high. The portico at the front of the main hall of the temple extended the width of the temple, that is 20 cubits, and projected 10 cubits from the front of the temple. He made narrow clerestory windows in the temple. Against the walls of the main hall and inner sanctuary, he built a structure around the building in which there were side rooms. The lowest floor was 5 cubits wide, the middle floor 6 cubits, and the third floor 7. He made offset ledges around the outside of the temple so that nothing would be inserted into the temple walls. In building the temple, only blocks dressed at the quarry were used, and no hammer, chisel, or any other iron tool was heard at the temple site while it was being built. The entrance to the lowest floor was on the south side of the temple. A stairway led up to the middle level, and from there to the third. So he built the temple and completed it, roofing it with beams and cedar planks, and he built the side rooms all along the temple. The height of each was 5 cubits, and they were attached to the temple by beams of cedar. So just a little backstory. David previously, which is Solomon's father, was praising the Lord so much, and then he realized that he had a palace for himself. They have now been in the promised land for some time, and so now David is a king right after Saul, and they have a palace, and so everything was going good. Everything David did was blessed. All of his actions, he won all of his battles. Or was winning all of his battles at the time. And so he was praising the Lord, and he stopped and thought to himself that he has all these things, even a palace for himself, but the Lord was still in a tabernacle. It was still in tents, basically. And so David wanted to build a permanent temple to the Lord. And while David was praising the Lord, he told the Lord that he wanted to build this temple. And so one of the prophets came, I'm not quite sure if it was Nathan again, and said, the Lord heard you, and gave him a lot, told him a lot, and said, gave him a prophecy that someone from his line will sit on the throne for eternity, which is true, which is Jesus. And then also that David would not be the person to build the temple, but it would be one of his sons, the one that the Lord chose to build his temple. And so now we're finding out that Solomon, through the son of both David and Bathsheba, because remember, the Lord can turn any type of sin around, right? And so and wrongdoing around. And so now Solomon is king. Solomon also, in the previous Bible study, did something that is very humbling and very very correct. And that he went to the Lord, and the Lord asked him what he would like in life. And Solomon said he wanted wisdom to lead the Lord's people. He didn't ask for riches. He didn't ask for a long life. He didn't ask for just being like the most popular person. He asked for wisdom to make sure that he was appropriately leading Israel. So God gave it to him. He gave him wisdom as well as longevity and wealth. And so Solomon also is building the temple, and he has built the temple, and that's where we are at today. And so there's many things that we can be grateful for, and also understand that when we follow through those things that we are to do, that there is blessings on the other side. And so that brings past to present. Even for myself, sometimes I doubt. Okay, am I doing this correctly? Am I taking the right path? Am I doing what I'm supposed to do? Am I at in my life where I'm supposed to be at? And I believe the Lord answers those, and he answers those constantly, especially when I doubt. He says, he shows me, he blesses me. He says it. Yes, this is where you need to be. This is what you need to do at this time. And so anytime we feel that doubt, we can go to the Lord. We can pray and go to the Lord and ask for peace, and he will provide. And we also need to, of course, have patience, because it's in the Lord's time as well. So reading over this part, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. There's a lot of reading today. The word of the Lord came to Solomon. As for this temple you are building, if you follow my decrees, carry out my regulations, and keep all my commands and obey them, I will fulfill through you the promise I gave to David your father, and I will live among the Israelites and will not abandon my people Israel. So Solomon built the temple and completed it. He lined its interior walls with cedar boards, paneling them from the floor of the temple to the ceiling, and covered the floor of the temple with planks of pine. He partitioned off 20 cubits at the rear of the temple with cedar boards from floor to ceiling to form within the temple an inner sanctuary, the most holy place. The main hall in front of this room was 40 cubits long. The inside of the temple was cedar carved with gourds and open flowers. Everything was cedar. No stone was to be seen. He prepared the inner sanctuary within the temple to set the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord there. The inner sanctuary was 20 cubits long, 20 wide, and 20 high. He overlaid the inside with pure gold, and he also overlaid the altar of cedar. Solomon covered the inside of the temple with pure gold, and he extended gold chains across the front of the inner sanctuary, which was overlaid with gold. So he overlaid the whole interior with gold. He also overlaid with gold the altar that belonged to the inner sanctuary. In the inner sanctuary, he made a pair of cherubim of olive wood, each 10 cubits high. One wing of the first cherub was 5 cubits long, and the other wing 5 cubits, 10 cubits from wing tip to wing tip. The second cherub also measured 10 cubits, for the 2 cherubim were identical in size and shape. The height of each cherub was 10 cubits. He placed the cherubim inside the innermost room of the temple with their wings spread out. The wing of one cherub touched one wall, while the wing of the other touched the other wall, and their wings touched each other in the middle of the room. He overlaid the cherubim with gold. On the walls all around the temple in both the inner and outer rooms, he carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. He also covered the floors of both the inner and outer rooms of the temple with gold. For the entrance of the inner sanctuary, he made doors of olive wood with 5-sided jambs, and on the 2 olive wood doors he carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers, and overlaid the cherubim and palm trees with beaten gold. In the same way, he made 4-sided jambs of olive wood for the entrance to the main hall. He also made 2 pine doors, each having 2 leaves that turned in sockets. He carved cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers on them and overlaid them with gold hammered evenly over the carvings. And he built the inner courtyard of 3 courses of dressed stone and 1 course of trimmed cedar beams. The foundation of the temple of the Lord was laid in the 4th year, in the month of Ziv. In the 11th year, in the month of Bul, the 8th month, the temple was finished in all its details according to its specifications. He had spent 7 years building it. So Solomon gets to build the temple to the Lord, and man, he did it up. He used a lot of gold. He on all over the inside of the temple, and it was gleaming, and it took him some time. It took him 7 years, which is very interesting. And so, because there's, you can talk about 7 days to create the earth, and then he rested on the 7th day. There's men to work 6 days and then rest on the 7th, for the Sabbath. So there's a lot here, and he made sure to take the time to put in all the details in all the rooms and all the places, using the gold, using carved cutouts of cherubim and palm trees and open flowers all throughout. So it definitely was a beautiful thing that he created as a temple for the Lord. So is there things in our life that we take our time to do, such as, like, give you an example, an artist, it could take an artist who paints a couple months, a couple of years to complete a painting, because they pay attention to the fine details. They see things that they can make better and make changes to. A musician, the same way. Musicians, it could take people years to do that. Any type of occupation or thing that we think of that we may become passionate about can take us time, and we fine-tune the details, and we fine-tune the imagery of whatever we're creating. And so there's a lot to think about there. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Solomon builds his palace. Okay, so now Solomon's building a palace, huh? And it took Solomon 13 years, however, to complete the construction of his palace. He built the palace of the forest of Lebanon, 100 cubits long, 50 wide, and 30 high, with 4 rows of cedar columns supporting trimmed cedar beams. It was roofed with cedar above the beams that rested on the columns, 45 beams, 15 to a row. Its windows were placed high in sets of 3 facing each other. All the doorways had rectangular frames. They were in the front part in sets of 3 facing each other. He made a colonnade 50 cubits long and 30 wide. In front of it was a portico, and in front of that were pillars and an overhanging roof. So a lot of today's lessons and what we're going to read over is a lot of descriptions. So it's to give us a lot of imagery and background as to what was going on and what was being built and how it looked. So it gives us a lot of details. Let's continue to read. He built the throne hall, the hall of justice, where he was to judge, and he covered it with cedar from floor to ceiling. And the palace in which he was to live, set farther back, was similar in design. Solomon also made a palace like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had married. All these structures, from the outside to the great courtyard and from foundation to eaves, were made of blocks of high grade stone to cut, size, and trimmed with a saw on their inner and outer faces. The foundations were laid with large stones of good quality, some measuring 10 cubits and some 8. Above were high grade stones cut to size and cedar beams. The great courtyard was surrounded by a wall of 3 courses of dressed stone and 1 course of trimmed cedar beams, as was the inner courtyard of the temple of the Lord with its portico. So there was another note up what we just read over about how Solomon married Pharaoh's daughter. And so a lot of times, especially in those days, and this may have been the case as well, is that sometimes peace treaties are made, or work treaties would be made, as in like partnerships or beneficial trades would be made, and that would include typically a ruler exchanging their child, as in not child, but as in an offering of their child to be wed. So to another, so like a person, like a king, would be offered a princess to become his queen. Trying to think of different things at the same time, thinking of like even more recent, like more how, like in England, they still have kings, and in some countries they still have kings and queens and such. In England, they have a queen. They have a reigning queen right now. So I was like trying to think of different things, and I know there's different royalties, out there, and so when it comes to, again, though, in Old Testament, back in during the law and such, and during this time, I believe it was a good sign, of not only peace, but of working together. So, but please do correct me if I'm wrong on that in the comment section. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. The temple's furnishings. King Solomon sent to Tyre and brought Hiram, whose mother was a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and whose father was a man of Tyre and a craftsman in bronze. Hiram was highly skilled and experienced in all kinds of bronze work. He came to King Solomon and did all the work assigned to him. He cast 2 bronze pillars, each 18 cubits high and 12 cubits around, by line. He also made 2 capitals of cast bronze to set on the tops of the pillars. Each capital was 5 cubits high. A network of interwoven chains fastened the capitals on top of the pillars, 7 for each capital. He made pomegranates in 2 rows, encircling each network to decorate the capitals on top of the pillars. He did the same for each capital. The capitals on top of the pillars in the portico were in the shape of lilies, 4 cubits high. On the capitals of pillars above the bowl-shaped part next to the network were the 200 pomegranates in rows all around. He erected the pillars at the portico of the temple. The pillar to the south he named Jachin, and the one to the north Boaz. The capitals on top were in the shape of lilies, and so the work on the pillars was completed. Oh, just beautiful, right? Pillars had big giant lilies at the top of them as their toppers. He made the sea of cast metal, circular in shape, measuring 10 cubits from rim to rim and 5 cubits high. It took a line of 30 cubits to measure around it. Below the rim, gourds encircled it, 10 to a cubit. The gourds were cast in 2 rows in one piece with the sea. The sea stood on 12 bowls, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, and 3 facing east. The sea rested on top of them, and their hind quarters were toward the center. It was a handbreadth in thickness, and its rim was like the rim of a cup, like a lily blossom. It held 2,000 baths. So this, was to be used for washing, I believe. Please correct me if I'm wrong. He also made 10 movable stands of bronze. Each was 4 cubits long, 4 wide, and 3 high. This is how the stands were made. They had side panels attached to uprights. On the panels between the uprights were lions, bulls, and cherubim, and on the uprights as well. Above and below the lions and bulls were wreaths of hammered work. Each stand had 4 bronze wheels with bronze axles, and each had a basin resting on 4 supports, cast with wreaths on each side. On the inside of the stand there was an opening that had a circular frame 1 cubit deep. This opening was round, and with its basework it measured 1.5 cubits. Around its opening there was engraving. The panels of the stands were square, not round. The 4 wheels were under the panels, and the axles of the wheels were attached to the stand. The diameter of each wheel was 1.5 cubits. The wheels were made like chariot wheels. The axles, rims, spokes, and hubs were all of cast metal. Each stand had 4 handles, 1 on each corner, projecting from the stand. At the top of the stand there was a circular band 0.5 cubit deep. The supports and panels were attached to the top of the stand. He engraved cherubim, lions, and palm trees on the surfaces of the supports and on the panels in every available space, with wreaths all around. They were all cast in the same molds and were identical in size and shape. He then made 10 bronze basins, each holding 40 baths and measuring 4 cubits across, 1 basin to go on each of the 10 stands. He placed 5 of the stands on the south side of the temple and 5 on the north. He placed the sea on the south side at the southeast corner of the temple. He also made the basins and shovels and sprinkling bowls. So Hiram finished all the work he had undertaken for King Solomon in the temple of the Lord. The 2 pillars, the 2 bowl-shaped capitals on top of the pillars, the 2 sets of network decorating the 2 bowl-shaped capitals on top of the pillars, the 400 pomegranates for the 2 sets of network, 2 rows of pomegranates for each network decorating the bowl-shaped capitals on top of the pillars, the 10 stands with their 10 basins, the sea and the 12 bowls under it, the pots, shovels, and sprinkling bowls. So there was quite a lot that Hiram helped make, and of course he was blessed with the gift, and he was able to make those from the Lord. And we can think about that. What kind of things do we think about when we are thinking about ourselves when it comes to knowing if we each have gifts? Because the Lord provides each of us gifts. And do you know what your gift is? Pray about it. I always say pray about it, and ask the Lord and listen, because each one of us, he provides gifts to each one. So what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. All these objects that Hiram made for King Solomon for the temple of the Lord were of burnished bronze. The king had them cast in clay molds in the plain of the Jordan between Succoth and Zarethan. Solomon left all these things unweighted because there was so many. The weight of the bronze was not determined. Solomon also made all the furnishings that were in the Lord's temple: the golden altar, the golden table on which was the bread of the presence, the lampstands of pure gold, 5 on the right and 5 on the left in front of the inner sanctuary, the gold floral work and lamps and tongs, the pure gold basins, wick trimmers, sprinkling bowls, dishes and censers, and the gold sockets for the doors of the innermost room, the most holy place, and also for the doors of the main hall of the temple. When all the work King Solomon had done for the temple of the Lord was finished, he brought in the things his father David had dedicated, the silver and gold and the furnishings, and he placed them in the treasuries of the Lord's temple. So now finally he has a place to put all of what was dedicated to the Lord, all the jewels and gold and all the things that they had obtained over the years, and now he was able to place it with the Lord in his temple. So that's amazing right there. That's amazing. Do you have a place? Do we have a place in our home, in our dwelling, where we store things, where we're able to store things? And we can take the opportunity to thank the Lord for that. Thank the Lord for being able to keep hold of mementos or things that that you think in life are important, such as the Bible. And so think about that. How we can, thinking about past and present, how blessed we are as well. So, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. The Ark brought to the temple. Then King Solomon summoned into his presence at Jerusalem the elders of Israel, all the heads of the tribes and the chiefs of the Israelite families, to bring up the Ark of the Lord's covenant from Zion, the city of David. All the men of Israel came together to King Solomon at the time of the festival in the month of Ithnim, the 7th month. When all the elders of Israel had arrived, the priests took up the ark, and they brought up the ark of the Lord and the tent of meeting and all the sacred furnishings in it. The priests and Levites carried them up, and King Solomon had the entire assembly of Israel that had gathered about him were before the ark, sacrificing so many sheep and cattle that they cannot be recorded or counted. So Solomon's having transporting the ark correctly. He has the Levites doing it. Whereas before, there were different times where random people, and then it was not how they, the ark was supposed to be taken. And so one person had reached out and touched it and passed because of it. Because it was not to be taken for granted and taken as something that was not important. It was of very importance that was of the Lord. So let's continue to read. The priest then brought the Ark of the Lord's covenant to its place in the inner sanctuary of the temple, the most holy place, and put it beneath the wings of the cherubim. The cherubim spread their wings over the place of the ark and overshadowed the ark and its carrying poles. These poles were so long that their ends could be seen from the holy place in front of the inner sanctuary, but not from outside the holy place, and they are still there today. There was nothing in the ark except the 2 stone tablets that Moses had placed in it at Horeb, where the Lord made a covenant with the Israelites after they came out of Egypt. When the priests withdrew from the holy place, the cloud filled the temple of the Lord, and the priests could not perform their service because of the cloud, for the glory of the Lord filled this temple. Amen, right? Then Solomon said, "The Lord has said that he will dwell in a dark cloud. I have indeed built a magnificent temple for you, a place for you to dwell forever." While the whole assembly of Israel were standing there, the king turned around and blessed them. Then he said, "Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, who with his own hand has fulfilled what he promised with his own mouth to my father David. For he said, 'Since the day I brought my people Israel out of Egypt, I have not chosen a city in any tribe of Israel to have a temple built for my name to be there, but I have chosen David to rule my people Israel.' My father David had it in his heart to build a temple for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. But the Lord said to my father David, 'Because it was in your heart to build a temple for my name, you did well to have this in your heart. Nevertheless, you are not the one to build the temple, but your son, who is your own flesh and blood. He is the one who will build the temple for my name." See, even Solomon knows. The Lord has kept the promise he made. I have succeeded David, my father, and now I sit on the throne of Israel, just as the Lord promised, and I have built the temple for the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. I have provided a place there for the ark, in which is the covenant of the Lord that he made with our fathers when he brought them out of Egypt. So Solomon's proclaiming to the people, like, The blessing, the promise is fulfilled, and promises kept. So that's another thing that we can think about, past, present. The Lord fulfills and keeps his promises. The Lord loves us. As long as we believe in him, believe in Jesus as our Savior, the Lord's with us. The Lord blesses us, and so think about that even today. And we read these truths that have happened in the past, and some people feel like, well, they don't know if they have a blessing, or they don't know if they're loved. You're loved. You're loved beyond measure, and you're blessed. And if you don't feel blessed, pray about it, give it to God, and you will be blessed. You will be blessed. And so because the Lord is love. The Lord is love, and he loves us. So reading over these passages and how the promises has been fulfilled and kept, and then saying that, and then giving it back to God and thanking him, humbling yourself and thanking him for the promises, for the blessings that he has provided us, provided you, provided me. And so I thank him. When I pray, I thank him throughout the day. I thank the Lord. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Solomon's prayer of dedication. Then Solomon stood before the altar of the Lord in front of the whole assembly of Israel, spread out his hands toward heaven, and said, O Lord, God of Israel, there is no God like you in heaven above or on earth below. You who keep your covenant of love with your servants, who continue wholeheartedly in your way. I'm going to reread this again. You who keep your covenant of love with your servants, who continue wholeheartedly in your way. And that's what this whole book is about. It's about love. Love, someone who loves us through thick and thin, can utilize discipline in the righteous way, can provide righteousness to us, just as long as we trust in him and have faith. Let's continue to read. You have kept your promise to your servant David, my father. With your mouth you have promised, and with your hand you have fulfilled it, as it is today. Now, Lord God of Israel, keep your servant David, my father, the promise you made to him when you said, you shall never fail to have a man to sit before me on the throne of Israel, if only your sons are careful in all they do to walk before me as you have done. And now, O God of Israel, let your word that you promised your servant David, my father, come true. But will God really dwell on earth? The heavens, even the highest heaven, cannot contain you. How much less this temple I have built? Yet give attention to your servant's prayer and his plea for mercy, O Lord my God. I was thinking about something, so I want to do a quick pause. So this is a portion of the Bible where it talks about heavens, and the heavens, even the highest heaven. Okay, so there's a lot to this. Now, some scholars and people who study the Bible believe that there are actual levels of heaven. Whenever I've read the Bible, I've read it as in somewhat a figuratively speech. So you have the earth, and then you have the heavens, which in the heavens case would be space, or the sky, the first sky, right? The sky, the clouds. And at this time, they didn't have airplanes. So, although people were moved about in whirlwinds, yeah. So you have, excuse me, the sky, heaven, space outside. So where the stars the stars and the moon and the sun as heaven, and then have actual heaven, the holy where the Lord resides, heaven. And so some Bible scholars and such don't believe that a lot of times when the levels of heaven, like the heaven, the highest heaven, and they actually believe that there's actual, some people believe that there's actual heavens. And so, like I mentioned, when I read it, a lot of times I've noticed that how they're talking and what they're talking about each time typically is sky, space, and then heaven, something like that. But some people don't, right? Some people think there's more to it. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind about that? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? If you have any questions, concerns, or if you have more in-depth information about how you believe for like the levels of heavens and such, leave them in the comments. Leave them in the comments. Okay, let's continue to read. How much less this temple I have built. Yet give attention to your servant's prayer and his plea for mercy, O Lord my God. Hear the cry and the prayer that your servant is praying in your presence this day. May your eyes be open toward this temple night and day, this place of which you said, my name shall be there, so that you will hear the prayer your servant prays toward this place. Hear the supplication of your servant and of your people Israel when they pray toward this place. Hear from heaven, your dwelling place, and when a man wrongs his neighbor and is required to take an oath, and he comes and swears the oath before your altar in this temple, then hear from heaven and act. Judge between your servants, condemning the guilty and bringing down on his own head what he has done. Declare the innocent not guilty, and so establish his innocence. And so Solomon's asking that the temple be utilized, that everything be utilized, and that the Lord there is going to be there with them. Let's continue to read. When your people Israel have been defeated by an enemy because they have sinned against you, and when they turn back to you and confess your name, praying and making supplication to you in this temple, then hear from heaven and forgive the sin of your people Israel and bring them back to the land you gave to their fathers. When the heavens are shut up and there is no rain because your people have sinned against you, excuse me again, and when they pray toward this place and confess your name and turn from their sin because you have afflicted them, then hear from heaven and forgive the sin of your servants, your people Israel. Teach them the right way to live and send rain on the land you gave your people from an inheritance. So that's another thing. That's another reason part about the heavens thing, right? Going back to that real fast. So because there's different parts in the Bible where the Lord says that he shut off the rains from heaven. And so heaven as in, and some people believe that it's actually, he's talking about different parts of heaven. And that is interesting. That would be interesting to, if that was, to me, it could be said like, basically there's no cloud in the sky, there's, no rain cloud, it's not going to rain, right? Or it could be, there may be clouds in the sky, but it doesn't rain because the Lord's it might be. There may be a place in heaven that it might be. That's one of those that it's like, it'd be interesting to find out when during when we get to meet the Lord, it could be either way. I'm not sure. That's one of those that maybe we can pray about. It's one of those like, maybe. And I'm so glad I have my drink here because I've been like dry mouth this whole time. So what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel? And what does it make you think? Okay, let's continue to read. When famine or plague comes to the land, or blight or mildew, locusts or grasshoppers, or when an enemy besieges them in any of these cities, whatever disaster or disease may come. And when a prayer or plea is made by any of your people, Israel, each one aware of the afflictions of his own heart, and spreading out his hand toward this temple, then hear from heaven your dwelling place, forgive and act. Deal with each man according to all he does. Since you know his heart, for you alone know the hearts of all men, so that they will fear you all the time they live in the land you gave our fathers. So this is another interesting part, because it's talking about how the Lord knows our heart, right? It's true. The Lord knows us. The Lord knows us. The Lord knows you. The Lord knows me. The Lord knows us and how we actually think. So don't think that we can hide anything, hide your true feeling or any of that, because the Lord knows it already. It's like trying to hide something that's like clear as day to the Lord. Like he's looking, he knows your thoughts. He's looking at you, you know, like it's like somebody what just came into my mind, like, like, you know, you did something wrong, and when people have seen you did something wrong, and you're just kind of like, you know, kind of moving slowly, moving out of the way, or trying to fix something back, or whatever it may be. And everybody's like, well, that's the Lord. So we have to admit the sin and ask for forgiveness. And we have a Father who loves us. So it's going to happen. Forgiveness is going to happen. Believe and have faith. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. As for the foreigner who does not belong to your people Israel, but has come from a distant land because of your name, for men will hear of your great name and your mighty hand and your outstretched arm when he comes and prays toward this temple. Then hear from heaven your dwelling place, and do whatever the foreigner asks of you, so that all the people of the earth may know your name and fear you, as do your own people Israel, and may know that this house I have built bears your name. That's another quick stopping point that I wanted to pause at, because there's a lot of people who believe at different parts, like that the Lord, like his love is limited just to Israel. Yes, like it's not limited. He's during this time, during the law, during the Old Testament, he has picked Israel, the people of Israel, the Hebrews, to be his people. However, as you can see, read this little part again, and do whatever the foreigner asks of you, so that all peoples of the earth may know your name and fear you. Because everyone is his child. Everyone has the chance to come to know the Lord. Every single person. And if they refuse, the Lord will go over that. But every single person has the chance, or will be able to decide, and so if they want to know the Lord and love him back, or they decide not to. But his love is for everybody, every single person, even those that don't believe in him, so that they can come to understand and love him back and believe in him. So there's a lot here, lots and lots here. And I feel like I'm stumbled over my words a little bit. So at this time, the Lord is Lord over Israel. However, remember, when Israel was blessed, so were the nations around. When Israel was following the commandments and such, being blessed, All of the nations around him were blessed, and they wanted to know. They wanted to know why. Wow, why are you doing so good? Why are they doing so good? And a lot of times they came to know the Lord. Those people, those foreigners and people would come, and that's an example. When we ourselves walk in the way, and we follow the Lord, and we believe in Jesus, and we ourselves do, not forcing a lot, not again, not doing those battles, give them to the Lord, not forcing us, but us ourselves believing and having that faith. That's like a light that people just want to come to and flock to, and they want to know that. They want to know, why are you so happy? Why are you so happy? Why are you joyful? Why do you smile all the time? Why do you laugh? And why do I think you know something that I don't know? What is it? What is it? You know something. Well, it's the answer of life or something. You know what to tell them. You know exactly what to tell them. It's Jesus. That is the fulfillment. The fulfillment, and we'll get to that in Ecclesiastes too. The Solomon, like David, Solomon, man, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes. We're gonna get to those too. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. When your people go to war against their enemies, wherever you send them, and when they pray to the Lord toward the city you have chosen and the temple I have built for your name, then hear from heaven their prayer and their plea and uphold their cause. When they sin against you, for there is no one who does not sin. I'm going to say this again. When they sin against you, for there is no one who does not sin. So, past to present, there was only one person that did not sin, that is Jesus. Every single person, when they sin against you, for there is no one who does not sin. Because we have that temptation, we have our own thoughts and feelings, and we have our own self-righteousness sometimes, and pride and prejudices and all that other stuff without going to the Lord, and boom. It happens. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. And you become angry with them. It's justified. And you become angry with them and give them over to the enemies, who takes them captive to his own land, far away or near. And if they have a change of heart in the land where they are held captive, and repent and plead with you in the land of their conquerors, and say, we have sinned, we have done wrong, we have acted wickedly. And if they turn back to you, with all their heart and soul in the land of their enemies who took them captive, and pray to you toward the land you gave their fathers, toward the city you have chosen, and the temple I have built for your name, then from heaven, your dwelling place, hear their prayer and their plea, and uphold their cause, and forgive your people who have sinned against you. Forgive all the offenses they have omitted against you, and cause their conquerors to show them mercy, for they are your people and your inheritance, whom you brought out of Egypt, out of that iron smelting furnace. There are some things right here, and I just dropped something. Okay, I see it, but okay. So, there's a lot here, and some people will reference this towards, other practices and religions, and so right now, though, we are focusing on what Solomon is stating, and so we may go over that at a later time. But right now, we're just talking about what was going on with Solomon, and how he's telling the Lord, basically prophesying too. what's going to happen? This is take note of what he's stating. Sins and getting captured, being captives in a foreign land. Take note of all of this, because it's actually like a prophecy. It actually is a prophecy. Maybe he didn't know it at the time, or maybe he did know it at the time. I think he didn't. I think he was just saying what could happen. And so, yeah, there's a lot here. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. For they are your people. Let me back up. And forgive your people. No, I'm going to go back even further. Okay. Then from heaven, your dwelling place, hear their prayer and their plea, and uphold their cause, and forgive your people who have sinned against you. Forgive all the offenses they have committed against you, and cause their conquerors to show them mercy. For they are your people and your inheritance, whom you brought out of Egypt, out of that iron smelting furnace. May your eyes be open to your servant's plea and to the plea of your people Israel, and may you listen to them whenever they cry out to you, for you singled them out from all the nations of the world to be your own inheritance, just as you declared through your servant Moses, when you, O sovereign Lord, brought our fathers out of Egypt. When Solomon had finished all these prayers and supplications to the Lord, he rose from before the altar of the Lord, where he had been kneeling with his hands spread out toward heaven. He stood and blessed the whole assembly of Israel in a loud voice, saying, Praise be to the Lord, who has given rest to his people Israel, just as he promised. No one word has failed of all the good promises he gave through his servant Moses. May the Lord our God be with us as he was with our fathers. May he never leave us nor forsake us. May he turn our hearts to him, to walk in all his ways and to keep the commands, decrees, and regulations he gave our fathers. And may these words of mine, which I have prayed before the Lord, be near to the Lord our God day and night, that he may uphold the cause of his servant and the cause of his people Israel according to each day's need. So that all the peoples of the earth may know that the Lord is God, and that there is no other. But your hearts must be fully committed to the Lord our God, to live by his decrees and obey his commands, as at this time. So he's telling the people, let's get it together, right? Let's get it together. Unfortunately, people had the Baals and the Ashtaroths and such, so he's trying to tell them, hey, let's get it together. Let's worship the Lord only. He's going to bless us. He's blessed us now. He's blessing us. He will continue to bless us, and all the nations will come to him through our blessings and through seeing what we're blessed with. So, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. The dedication of the temple. We may just go over just a tad today. So then the king and all Israel with him offered sacrifices before the Lord. Solomon offered a sacrifice of fellowship offering to the Lord, 22,000 cattle and 120,000 sheep and goats. So the king and all the Israelites dedicated the temple of the Lord. That's a lot. On that same day, the king consecrated the middle part of the courtyard in front of the temple of the Lord, and there he offered burnt offerings, grain offerings, and the fat of the fellowship offerings, because the bronze altar before the Lord was too small to hold the burnt offerings, the grain offerings, and the fat of the fellowship offerings. So Solomon observed the festival at that time, and all Israel with him, a vast assembly, people from Lebo Hamath to the Wadi of Egypt. They celebrated it before the Lord our God for 7 days and 7 days more, 14 days in all. On the following day, he sent the people away. They blessed the king and then went home, joyful and glad in heart for all the good things the Lord had done for his servant David and his people Israel. So, they had a 14-day festival. Do we have a festival that lasts that long? I think there might be in some different areas and maybe different parts of the world. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. The Lord appears to Solomon. When Solomon had finished building the temple of the Lord and the royal palace and had achieved all he had desired to do, the Lord appeared to him a second time, as he had appeared to him at Gibeon. The Lord said to him, I have heard the prayer and plea you have made before me. I have consecrated this temple which you have built by putting my name there forever. My eyes and my heart will always be there. As for you, if you walk before me in integrity of heart and uprightness, as David your father did, and do all I command and observe my decrees and laws, I will establish your royal throne over Israel forever, as I promised David your father, when I said, you shall never fail to have a man on the throne of Israel. But if you or your sons turn away from me, and do not observe the commands and decrees I have given you, and go off to serve other gods and worship them, then I will cut off Israel from the land I have given them, and will reject this temple I have consecrated for my name. Israel will then become a byword and an object of ridicule among all peoples. And though this temple is now imposing, all who pass by will be appalled and will scoff and say, why has the Lord done such a thing to this land and to this temple? People will answer, because they have forsaken the Lord their God, who brought their fathers out of Egypt, and have embraced other gods, worshiping and serving them. That is why the Lord brought all this disaster on them. So there you have it. He's telling them, this is what the people are going to say when you don't, because everything's going to be destroyed. And then they're going to say, why did this happen? And I'm like, oh, because they weren't worshiping their Lord. They were worshiping these other things. Lord always tells us what's going to happen ahead of time. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel? And what does it make you think? Yes, the Lord talks to us, so we need to listen, right? Let's continue to read. Solomon's other activities. At the end of 20 years, during which Solomon built these two buildings, the temple of the Lord and the royal palace, King Solomon gave 20 towns in Galilee to Hiram, king of Tyre, because Hiram had supplied him with all the cedar and pine and gold he wanted. I think this is not a good time. This is the beginning, or this is around the time where Solomon starts going sideways, and we'll get to that here in just a moment. Let's continue reading. So he gave the towns. Okay, but when Hiram went from Tyre to see the towns that Solomon had given him, he was not pleased with them. What kind of towns are these you have given me, my brother? He asked, and he called them the land of Kabul, a name they have to this day. So basically, good to this. They have, okay. Now Hiram had sent the king 120 talents of gold. So Solomon is starting to show a little bit of, not like, a little bit of selfishness, you know, a little bit of pride, a little bit of arrogance. So he was like, Solomon was like, well, it's like, oh, that's right, I gotta give him some towns. I gotta give him something, right? So he gives them these places that were like nothing. Like probably no infrastructure, probably just worthless, like nothing that there was nothing. You know, like maybe not good farmland, maybe not good anything. They were just areas that were just kind of like, and so King was like, the Hiram who had been helping Solomon was kind of like, so I did all this, helped you, and this is the gift you give me? Okay. So let's continue to read. Here is the account of the forced labor King Solomon conscripted to build the Lord's temple, his own palace, the supporting terraces, the wall of Jerusalem, and Hazor, Megiddo, and Gezer. Pharaoh, king of Egypt, had attacked and captured Gezer. He had set it on fire. He killed its Canaanite inhabitants and then gave it as a wedding gift to his daughter, Solomon's wife. And that's interesting. And Solomon rebuilt Gezer. He built up Lower Beth-horon, Baalath, and Tadmor in the desert within his land, as well as his store cities and the towns for his chariots and for his horses. Whatever he desired to build in Jerusalem, in Lebanon, and throughout all the territory he ruled. All the people left from the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. These peoples were not Israelites. that is, their descendants remaining in the land whom the Israelites could not exterminate. These Solomon conscripted for his slave labor force, as it is to this day. But Solomon did not make slaves of any of the Israelites. They were his fighting men, his government officials, his officers, his captains, and the commanders of his chariots and charioteers. They were also the chief officials in charge of Solomon's projects, 550 officials supervising the men who did the work. After Pharaoh's daughter had come up from the city of David to the palace Solomon had built for her, he constructed the supporting terraces. 3 times a year, Solomon sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings on the altar he had built for the Lord, burning incense before the Lord along with them, and so fulfilled the temple obligations. King Solomon also built ships at Ezon-Geber, which is near Elath in Edom, on the shore of the Red Sea, and Hiram sent his men, sailors who knew the sea, to serve in the fleet with Solomon's men. They sailed in Ophir and brought back 400 talents of gold, which they delivered to King Solomon. Wow, that's a lot. And so, but it looks like King Hiram didn't take it to heart, so they still have a decent working relationship, that is. And that happens, so be careful, you don't want to mistreat other people or not give just due, to other people, especially people that help you out, and vice versa, because it could jeopardize or harm a relationship. In this case, it was just like something that he kind of took note of, right? So what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. The Queen of Sheba visits Solomon. When the Queen of Sheba heard about the fame of Solomon and his relation to the name of the Lord, she came to test him with hard questions. Arriving at Jerusalem with a very great caravan with camels carrying spices, large quantities of gold, and precious stones, she came to Solomon and talked with him about all that she had on her mind. Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was too hard for the king to explain to her. When the Queen of Sheba saw all the wisdom of Solomon in the palace he had built, the food on his table, the seating of his officials, the attending servants in their robes, his cupbearers, and the burnt offerings he made at the temple of the Lord, she was overwhelmed. She said to the king, "The report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true. But I did not believe these things until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half was told me. In wisdom and wealth you have far exceeded the report I heard. How happy your men must be. How happy your officials who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. Praise be to the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and placed you on the throne of Israel. Because of the Lord's eternal love for Israel, he has made you king to maintain justice and righteousness." Even the Queen of Sheba, like I said, you walk in the way, it's people are interested. They want to know. They want that for themselves. And we can tell them. It's given to us freely. Love from the Lord. Just believe in Jesus. Amen. And so, what kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. And she gave the king 120 talents of gold, large quantities of spices and precious stones. Never again were so many spices brought in as those the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. Hiram's ships brought gold from Ophir, and from there they brought great cargoes of almug wood and precious stones. The king used the almug wood to make supports for the temple of the Lord and for the royal palace, and to make harps and lyres for the musicians. So much almug wood has never been imported or seen since that day. King Solomon gave the Queen of Sheba all she desired and asked for, besides what he had given her out of his royal bounty. Then she left in return with her retinue to her own country. And so I think she ended up leaving pretty much more than she even brought, but that was all blessings. She was very happy. And so it was like going to see someone who was famous, right? And that was Solomon because of his wisdom. And so that's just an awesome time. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Let's continue to read. Solomon's splendor. The weight of the gold that Solomon received yearly was 666 talents, not including the revenues from merchants and traders and from all the Arabian kings and the governors of the land. King Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold. 600 bekas of gold went into each shield. He also made 300 small shields of hammered gold with 3 minas of gold in each shield. The king put them in the palace of the forest of Lebanon. Then the king made a great throne inlaid with ivory and overlaid with fine gold. The throne had 6 steps, and its back had a rounded top. On both sides of the seat were armrests with a lion standing beside each of them. 12 lions stood on the 6 steps, one at either end of each step. Neither or nothing like it had ever been made for any other kingdom. So it's like representing the 12 tribes, right? All King Solomon's goblets were gold, and all the household articles in the palace of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. Nothing was made of silver, because silver was considered of little value in Solomon's days. Right? Wow. Amazing. The king had a fleet of trading ships at sea along with the ships of Hiram. Once every 3 years, it returned carrying gold, silver, and ivory, and apes and baboons. King Solomon was greater in riches and wisdom than all the other kings of the earth. The whole world sought audience with Solomon to hear the wisdom God had put in his heart. Year after year, everyone who came brought a gift, articles of silver and gold, robes, weapons and spices, and horses and mules. Amazing. So Israel went from a tiny group of people to Egypt, to expanding hugely, to being able to loot the Egyptians, right, as they left, given stuff, and then now they're by far the wealthiest people on the planet. At this time, because they were following the Lord, right? And so let's continue to read. Solomon accumulated chariots and horses. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horses, which he kept in the chariot cities and also with him in Jerusalem. The king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stones, and cedar as plentiful as sycamore fig trees in the foothills. Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt, and from Q, the royal merchants purchased them from Q. They imported a chariot from Egypt for 600 shekels of silver and a horse for 150. They also exported them to all the kings of the Hittites and of the Arameans. So, just was showing you just how plentiful Israel had at this time, and so, and how impressive it was. Everyone around the world was impressed and wanted to see it for themselves. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Remember, when we're walking in the way, and that happens, we get blessed, and people want to know, and you feel in your heart, and you feel in your mind, you feel in your spirit. Let's do a quick review, because we're way over again. Solomon builds the temple, so we got specifications and information on how what Solomon did to build the temple and how it looked. Solomon builds his palace. He builds a palace for himself as well. We also get details of the temple's furnishings on the inside, how everything was gold and overlaid with gold, both for the temple and a lot of parts of his palace too. The ark brought to the temple, then the ark was brought up to the temple, and they've made lots and lots of sacrifices to it and dedicated to the Lord, and the Lord accepted it. Solomon made a prayer and said, hey, please, Lord, we have built you your temple, place this reside forever and ever. We want to worship you as our God, and so come and worship and acknowledge it. And the Lord did. The Lord did, said it, but he also gave a warning. If the people turn away, I'm out. You're out. And so they dedicated the temple. The Lord appears to Solomon again, lets him know the rules, lays it down for him. Solomon's other activities, how he just was very wealthy because of his knowledge, and also how Queen Sheba, a very wealthy person herself, had heard about Solomon and came bearing tons of gifts and was amazed herself and proclaimed God, right? There you have it. There you have it. She proclaimed the Lord. She was like, wow, you were given this because your faith in the Lord, and the Lord has blessed you. Wow, this is amazing. And she proclaimed the Lord God. And there you have it. Think about it. What kind of thoughts or feelings come to your mind? How does it make you feel, and what does it make you think? Thank you so much for joining me on another Lamp Bible study. I know this was trying to go quick because it's a lot of information in a short amount of time. These Bible studies, Lamp Bible Study, come out every Tuesday and Thursday. Please continue to pray for me. I will always continue to pray for you. If you have any thoughts or comments or questions or concerns, please leave it in the comments. You can also find me on an Instagram page for Lamp Bible Study, as well as there's an email link on the YouTube page. If you want to join or do more stuff with Lamp Bible Study, you can always send an email or leave a comment. What have you. We'll continue to read. We'll continue to seek the Lord's wisdom together. Pray that we continue to seek the Lord's wisdom together. And of course, like I mentioned before, I just didn't mention at the beginning that I'll be reading the different translations. And I really am thinking about reading a multi-translation at the same time. So that'll take some time as well to go over. So on the next Bible study, we'll continue through the book of Kings, and we'll see what's in store for Solomon and how he continues through his kingship. So wherever you are, have a blessed morning, a blessed day, a blessed afternoon, a blessed evening, and a blessed night. God bless.